Welcome to Feelings and Other F Words. I'm Dr. Daryl Appleton, and this week's episode almost didn't happen. That's right. This episode was never going to air. And if you follow me on social media, I went on a large rant in one of my Instagram stories about just the nuance of this topic and how it's impossible to determine a right or a wrong because there's just so many layers to this bitch, right? Like there's just a lot there. And that's because this week we are going to try, being the operative word, try to unpack family fallout and specifically family estrangement. Now, I was talking with my aunt, and she very much was a champion and advocate for this episode to come out because there's so much of it. And we'll get into the statistics and all the nerdy stuff in a second. But when I was talking with her about it, and when I was thinking about this on my own time, there's just so many questions that comes up, right? Like, is estrangement a form of healing, or does it just create a new wound? Like, who do we become when we leave the family system we're trained in and trained to be? Can this be something that can be fixed? Is this fixable? Is estrangement fixable? And is it more prevalent as therapy becomes more prevalent? Like, are we actively pushing people to breaking ties with their families because we have more of a me first attitude? And is that a good thing? Or is that a not so good thing? And really, I think it's like, can we differentiate discomfort from danger? And that's one of the main reasons I started Feelings and Other F Words, because you all know how I feel about Insta therapy. You all know how I feel about the advice that we've been given and are getting out there. And I really think that part of this is understanding exactly that question. Like, is it danger and that's why we need to leave? Or is it discomfort? I don't know. And ultimately, the question that really keeps swirling around is like, is reconciliation always the goal, or is peace the goal? And peace with whom? Peace with your family? Peace with yourself? Like, I don't know. But I do think that this topic is so hard for so many people, whatever side of the coin, so to speak, that you're in or not, because there is no funeral. Sometimes like there's just no phone call. And a lot of times it's not a big blow up that happens. Many times there is, but it's just silence. And we all know that sometimes the silence in a relationship is the loudest. It's deafening. And estrangement to me is the breakup that we really and truly don't talk about because it's not romantic. And a lot of times, like, it gets to a point where it's not even dramatic. It's just heartbreak. Now, let's be very clear. Boundaries are not estrangement. So we need to like back it up, define it. You know, I like my operational definitions. Telling your mom, please don't comment on my weight at Thanksgiving is a boundary. Blocking your mom, changing your number, absconding into the night, leaving no forwarding address is estrangement. So we're not talking about setting boundaries with your family and them not respecting it. We're talking about literally breaking off ties. Like, I love you, but here's what I need is a boundary. This connection is no longer safe or possible is estrangement. And estrangement can be a form or an act, I suppose, of self-preservation and maybe even potentially a symptom of dysregulation. And that's where, again, this is so difficult because it's so nuanced. Now, disclaimer, asterisk, hear me, underline, highlight. I am going to be talking about a lot of blanket statements, terms, and it may not apply to your situation specifically. Everybody's situation is different. I couldn't possibly begin to speak on everyone's situation because I don't know the context and the nuances of everyone's situation. So you may hear some shit that comes out of my mouth that you don't like. Too bad. I'm not speaking directly to you. I'm speaking at a very high level, and hopefully you can do good things with the information and reflect on it, bring it to your therapist, let it marinate. But again, I can't possibly speak to everyone's specific situation and context. Now, this for me really started again, talking with my aunt, feeling how I feel about Insta therapy, and this advice that we're given, like these popular phrases of like, protect your peace, go no contact, like get rid of anybody that disagrees with you. Like there's something there that I think is such an oversimplification of incredibly complicated and real psychological processes, right? Like we constantly misuse therapeutic language on social media. Toxic, narcissist, which I do think leads to misunderstanding and estrangement. Now, those words are real and they do apply to a lot of people, but I think we are using them too much in too many scenarios that do not actually apply. And we are using words and then forcing a narrative to fit in to make those words feel real. But again, sometimes there are incredibly toxic people. Sometimes there are incredibly narcissistic people that fit the clinical definition of those terms. And for me, my therapeutic hat on, right? How do we know when to draw a line out of fear versus love? And really, these are the questions, these are the things that led me to actually pressing play and making this episode happen with my Aunt Debbie in my ear, sending me text messages every day about it. And I say that with love because I adore her. Now, the nerdy stuff. Let's get into the statistics. And you might be like, that's crazy. This is crazy. People break up with their families. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. All the fucking time. A study from Cornell actually found that 1 in 4 American adults is estranged from at least one family member. I'm going to say it again. 1 in 4 American adults are estranged from at least one family member. That is a wild statistic. That's insane to me. 1 in 4, those are, whew, that's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's a matter of when. And for me now as a parent, it's like, it's a matter of if it happens to you. Like that's the other side of all this. Now, the number does go up for LGBTQ plus adults, multiracial families, and get this, kids who grew up in homes where no one ever said, I'm sorry. So that those factors actually make this number of 1 in 4 go up. I mean, that's crazy. And so I dug a bit more and I was like, okay, well, why? Why is this happening? And is it happening now? You know, I'm very big on intergenerational conversations, and there is some generational tension. And everything I read and saw and looked at from all these different resources kind of boiled down to me. Again, I'm delineating, do your own research, but boiled down to baby boomers were taught to survive dysfunction. Not all, but many. Blood is thicker than water. That's your family member. Just grin and bear it. That's your grandpa. Go give him a hug, right? Millennials, on the other hand, we were then taught from our boomer parents to name what the dysfunction is and then leave it. We were almost given all of this information, all of this permission to not sit at a table that felt uncomfortable for us by our parents who were forced to sit at that table and eat what was ever in front of you, metaphorically and quite literally. And the issue there, it's not just a gap. It's not just age. It is quite literally a collision of worldviews. What I do in my world, in corporate, in counseling back in the day, like when we have an issue with something, I try to figure out what it is and if we can kind of get over it. We got to name it, we got to notice it, we got to navigate it. You guys have heard me talk about this a lot. If you're a client of mine, you've heard me talk about it a lot. But the issue here is when there is a difference in worldviews and thus values that underwrite our code, so to speak, it is incredibly hard to be on the same page with things. Like if you're telling me like blood is thicker than water and that's what you believe and that's your worldview, that you do whatever you need to do because that is your mother, that is your father, that's your family member, and they can do no wrong even when they do wrong. And the worldview over here is, it doesn't matter who you are. You can't treat me that way. We are going to have conflict on some level because our worldviews, again, are different. Now, the other thing that's underneath this, the nerdy stuff, there is a lot of psychology, especially on the evolutionary side, that shows that we are wired to stay in a tribe, even if that tribe hurts us, right? There is a lot of research out there about how isolation is so damaging. And it's, if you think about it, as I'm speaking out loud, as I do on this podcast, because I don't have any notes, we're just talking. If you think about it, when you are being punished by society, where do you go? You probably go to prison. In prison, when you are punished in prison, where do they put you? They put you in solitary confinement. So being punished to the arguably ultimate level is being alone. So that's how deeply this runs. That being alone, being ousted is not only from an evolutionary, from a survival standpoint, an issue, because if you don't have a tribe, you're more likely to get picked off by, as a loner by the pack. You're also more likely to suffer from depression, from anxiety, from things that tribes, groups give back to a person. Arguably, they can also make you depressed or anxious, but that's a conversation that we'll have in a bit. But here's the other thing. So if evolutionary psychology says we're wired to stay in the tribe is safety even when the tribe hurts us, modern psychology is saying if it's costing you your peace, you got to go. And this is where the TikTok and the Instagram therapy comes in, and it amplifies that. But now, in the rise of the me first therapy, we are seeing that my peace matters more than assimilating into this group or trying to make it work. And again, this is where I see it from both sides. I absolutely see that question of before, like, is it danger or is it discomfort? Are you uncomfortable or are you unsafe? Like, this is something I say a lot now to clients and organizations of like, is this an unsafe, toxic environment? Or are you just uncomfortable and we need to have some conversations? And that's really what it comes down to. Now, some people absolutely make the decision to cut contact and they feel 20 pounds lighter, right? Some people grieve for years about it, even if they think they made the right call. It just is, an ambiguous loss. It's a death. It needs to be mourned. And I say this all the time. You've heard me on social media say this. You can miss someone and not want them back, right? And that's not confusion. That's growth. That's dichotomy. That's something that we can actively go through. You can leave a job and be like, it was still the best thing ever, but I feel so sad. Leave a marriage, whatever it is. But are we doing it too soon or too harshly? Like, what is the psychology of the cut? And that's kind of like where my mind went. Now, there is a lot to talk about and unpack about grief, especially grief without a funeral. I don't want to do that here. That could be a whole other episode. But I do think that there is pain and ambiguity of unacknowledged loss. So I do think that with severing something like family, a family member, especially a parent, there's going to be repercussions, even again, if it's the best thing for you. Like, there is something called family systems theory, and it looks at different roles that people play in the family, the golden child, the scapegoat, stuff like that. But it also looks at what did we learn from our family that got internalized, and how does it impact our future relationships? And Jimmy and I, like many new couples, I mean, we're not newly married anymore, but in the beginning especially, there was a lot of conversations, read as conflict, that we would have about our family systems and merging our family systems together into a new family system. And having these conversations, again, read as conflict, of how he was raised and how I was raised and how it impacted us together, like our worldviews on things. And I do think that now a lot of times, speaking back to that tribe and the me first kind of therapy movement, that we have different options for our tribe. This whole, quote, chosen family psychology is a replacement for this tribal support, this, group support, this familial support. And we have that more now due to social media, due to people speaking up about stuff like this. So it is really interesting. And I do think that estrangement isn't just about the other person necessarily. Like, if you make that decision, it's not just about what they've done wrong. If you're going to make that decision, it's also about who are you becoming without this person in your life and intentionally leaning into that. Now, I got a lot of stories that were sent to me. My aunt sent me a lot of stories that she found on Facebook and all these interesting groups that she also sent me that exist. Hold on, let me find it. Hold on. Estrangement of parents is one of them. I'm scrolling, sorry. Toxic adult children. There's 31,000 members in toxic adult children group on Facebook. How much does this other one have? Estrangement of parents, 3.6 thousand members. Wow. Okay. I'm doing this live time, so I apologize. So people sent stuff into me. I want to read you 4 different ones from 4 different perspectives. And again, this is why this episode was so hard for me, because I get it, right? And I'm speaking bell curve. If you had a parent or a family member that abused you sexually, physically, mentally, like, again, danger versus dysregulation, right? Unsafe versus uncomfortable. Like, if it was an unsafe situation or continues to be an unsafe situation, like, get your shit and go. Define what unsafe is. Make sure you're not mislabeling uncomfortable for unsafe. Like, that's important. But I'm not talking about that here. I want to make that very clear. So this first one kind of like toes the line of that, and I'll let you guys decide. But here's the first one that was sent in to me. Hi, I'm 34, and I went no contact with my dad after he kept making racist comments in front of my mixed race kids. He says I'm, quote, too sensitive and I don't respect him. I say I've spent my whole life shrinking around his comfort. Is it me? And again, like, that's interesting, right? Like, I have questions, and I don't know this person or their context, but I guess my questions, if you were sitting in my proverbial office, laying on my proverbial couch, as one does, I would be like, okay, have you had the conversation? Because to me, healthy communication is fair communication. Before you get all riled up, listen to what I'm about to say. Fair communication means it's fair to me that I am saying what I mean and meaning what I say. That's on me. I can't say everything's fine when it's not fucking fine, right? I need to be fair to me and say what I mean and mean what I say. But is it also fair to you? I've given you the opportunity to change. Because there's nothing I dislike more than somebody being like, they're an asshole. I don't speak to them anymore, when I'm like, did you talk to them about it? And it's like, no. It's like, well, why? Especially in a meaningful relationship. I'm not talking about like your local barista and you go to a different place. Yeah, go get your cup of coffee where you're going to be welcomed. Fine. But like, people in your life that you've cut off or cut out and have never told them about it. I did an episode about friendship and ghosting on a podcast. I think it's called Coping with Ghosting, actually. Wonderful podcast. Check it out. But we talked about how, like, not having these conversations with people who matter can deeply impact that. So again, my question back to 34 here, I do think that there's something to be said about, like, did you tell dad that this bothers you? Were you very explicit in how you told him? And yes, too bad, that is your responsibility. And I would say that to your face, like, yes, you need to tell this person that is not okay with me. And you might be like, he needs to know that's not okay. Again, I'm going to tell you what you don't like to hear. That's okay. If you don't like to hear it, you can turn this off. Turn down the volume for another minute or two, because I'm going to go on a rant, and then you can turn it back up and I will have moved on. You need to tell that person that. Even if it ends up in estrangement, even if it ends up in that, it is important to say to that person, listen, I do not like that. If you continue to make these comments, I cannot be around you, and I'm sure as hell not going to bring my kids around you. So you have an opportunity here. You know you need to change. You know where my boundary is. If you don't like it, if you want to continue down this path, then you're making a choice, because I'm telling you I don't like it, right? That is a thing. You might feel differently. You're allowed to. I welcome that. This is how I feel about that. And this is what experience has taught me in the world of therapy and in the world of coaching and advising. You have to tell people what it is that you need or that you want. Again, bell curve. I'm not talking about these outliers of incredibly dangerous situations. Here is another one that was written into me. I haven't spoken to my daughter in 5 years. I'm not even sure what I did. She says I, quote, wasn't safe. I thought I was supportive. I'd give anything to hear her voice again, but I know it has to be her choice. And this kind of breaks my heart a little bit. Again, I have no idea who this woman is. I have no idea the context. She might be a horrible monster. But again, I think that goes to show how we need to tell people. And to be fair, her daughter might have told her over and over and over again, and she didn't listen. I don't know that. I have no idea. But it is important to be incredibly explicit. And sometimes, like, you got to write it down in a text message or an email. Like, it needs to be there so the other person can see it and read it and tangibly hold it, so to speak, to process it. Or, maybe this person just doesn't want to hear. And that, again, is on them. I had 2 other ones that were sent in to me, and these are a little bit longer and very interesting. Again, another perspective entirely. This one came from one of these Facebook posts that my aunt sent me. We had lots of conversations about this. So this was on one of the Facebook pages with like toxic adult children. I am making my response to another post in its own post in hopes that it can help others understand and maybe some can relate. I wholeheartedly believe this is why so many of us, there's like 31,000 of them, so many of us are experiencing such disrespect and estrangement from our kids today. Think of it this way. When we were younger, would you have ever dreamed of talking or treating your parents the way our kids talk and treat us today? Absolutely not. Truth be told, I didn't have the best parents. I basically raised myself and my sisters. My parents weren't addicts or anything, but they were just selfish. They were all about themselves and they were never around. I was buying most of my own necessities, soap, shampoo, clothes, by 14 or 15 years old. I babysat neighbors' kids to make my own money to buy things I never had but needed. But I never spoke or treated my parents horribly, and I never, ever kept my son away from them just to punish them for whatever reason. I knew it would be hurting my son. Lots of exclamation points. As long as they were good to my son and loved him, I was okay with that. But kids today, there's always a kids today, my son's generation, disrespect, control, manipulation, say that 10 times fast, Daryl, manipulation, estrangement are at an all-time high. It is heartbreaking. Over all the years that I've dealt with this torturous behavior, I've come to realize it's honestly a bad cycle. I was raised unseen, unheard, uncared for, and what I felt to be unloved. So I, in turn, gave my son everything I never had. He was the only one that mattered. He was our whole world, loved more than anything in our lives, including ourselves. Had anything and everything he ever wanted or needed, and then some. I created a monster. Now that he only believes he's the only one that matters. No one else's feelings, no one else's thoughts, needs, desires, only his matter. And now I pay the price. And though I only thought I was loving him and giving him the best, the love I never had, I hope that makes sense to everyone. That last sentence didn't make sense to me, but I get what she's saying. I believe with my entire heart, this is what has gone wrong with this generation. Now, again, this is like the kids these days, but it's interesting, right? And I wonder how much of that, I know how much of that, is that difference of worldviews that we were talking about before. Like, it is very hard to have a conversation when you think that worldview is the right worldview versus I would be interested to hear what the son has to say. And again, like, I think there's a lot of hurt there, and there's a lot that probably needs to be unpacked about giving your son everything and expecting something in return for that. Like, what are you expecting? You're expecting blind loyalty, fidelity? Like, what are you expecting? And that's kind of the millennial in me. I do think, again, the conversations need to be had. Here's another one that's a little bit longer, and then I'll get into kind of what to do about it or what the experts say to do about it, because I am not an expert in family estrangement. I don't want to be the expert in family estrangement. I didn't even want to do this podcast episode on it, but I am here to talk about the hard stuff, and I will do that. I'm committed to that. Here's another perspective. I'm experiencing a dismissive treatment, not only from my adult children in the form of estrangement. They just evaporated me from their lives. I don't think that's the appropriate use of that word, but whatever, that's fine. I support creativity. The weird thing that I'm noticing is the very same kind of treatment from the general population of the same general age ranges as my EC. EC. Oh, estranged child. Got it. Examples. All salespeople just ghost me if I do not immediately give them the quote sale on the first call. They do not stand for me quote shopping or researching their credentials to make an informed decision. They want my checkbook now or never. Again, no gaining of trust, just demands for themselves. No questions of how they could serve me better or earn my business. Or maybe I'm just being tossed out like garbage from everyone that crosses my path for a reason. Like maybe I'm not of any value unless there's cash in hand. This right here is projection. I don't know you. I don't know this woman. I have no idea. But I'm going to say from a standpoint, this feels a lot like projection. Potentially. It's messing with my head. Anyone else see a connection beyond our children, nieces, nephews, doctors, insurance brokers, real estate agents, movers, contractors, plumbers, blah, 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 have all promised me a call back, an estimate, a meeting, and poof, they're gone too. They do not reply to text messages, voicemails, emails of inquiry. Maybe it's me. So please, if so, please, I can take it, but I need to adjust something if I'm going to survive alone in this rotten era. And again, this I think is an example, again, of that projection and how sometimes generationally feeling unseen, unheard may shift a worldview of something that is not actually that. Like that's what projection does. We're copy and pasting a scenario to lots of other scenarios that all have their own nuances and things like that. So I guess part of that example is to also say, if you're dealing with estrangement, or if you're the one that is not choosing the estrangement, this is also a time to dive into, what do I need from me? And where am I copy and pasting stories? And is this a pattern or is this a copy and paste? Am I projecting or is this a pattern? And it's a wonderful thing to unpack, because this next part, I want to talk about what to do with it, because I do think it takes work on both sides. It's not somebody is right and somebody is wrong necessarily. If you want reconciliation, there needs to be work on both sides. When I work with couples, or have in the past, or even in the corporate setting, like there needs to be work done on both sides in order for things to get better. Now, if you're navigating family estrangement or thinking about it, here are some of the experts who talk about this. Dr. Joshua Coleman, who literally wrote the book on this, says that reconnection is absolutely possible, but 3 things need to happen. Number 1, the parent owns their shit, which is interesting. I think that it's very much like AA, parent, child, whatever. I won't say like which direction. I will say anytime there is conflict, Joshua Coleman says parents own their shit. I'm saying everybody needs to own their shit. It's very AA, right? The first step is admitting you have a problem. And beyond that, the first step is admitting like, maybe I didn't handle that the best way. Jimmy and I will get into fights all the time, right? We're fucking married. But the best fights we have are when I can take a step. It's usually me. I can take a step back and be like, you're right. I didn't handle that correctly. Like he came to me the other day and he's like, do not speak to me that way. I'm just trying to help. And I could have went back at him and been like, but you don't do this. And we're doing this. But instead in that moment, I was like, I was evolved. It was so evolved. It happens. Every once in a while, I have a moment of clarity. Just because you teach this stuff, people, doesn't mean I do it right all the time. I'm learning just like you. But in that moment, I had a moment of clarity. Jesus came to me, I suppose. And I said, you know what? You're absolutely right. You didn't deserve that. I could have handled that better. And immediately we started focusing on fixing the problem rather than fighting each other. So I think that's what this number 1 point means, of like owning your shit. It's very hard to reconcile when somebody continues to deny the hurt that was caused or not understand how the hurt was caused. And owning your shit doesn't mean like humbling yourself or falling on the sword. I think owning your shit can mean it was never my intention to hurt you that way. I can absolutely see how that could lead to this or lead to that feeling. That was never my intention, right? Like that's still owning your shit. It's not like I'm a terrible mother. Yes, absolutely. You're so right. That's not going to come off well anyway. And I can't even imagine like that fixes anything. But saying like, I did the best I could. I can 100% see how me being overbearing or me saying negative comments about your wife or your house or whatever it is, not like I have any of those stored up in my memory bank. But I do think that like saying something like that, like I can absolutely see how my relationship with your significant other has impacted our relationship. And I want to work on that, but I'm not sure how. And I want to do it together, right? Like there's something about that. Like we have people in our lives that we've distanced ourselves from because there isn't any ownership of it. And without the ownership, it feels a little unsafe is a strong word, and I'm recognizing that, but it feels a little like I'm just waiting for you to do the same shit again because you can't even tell me what it is that you understand that that's being done wrong, right? Just the same thing. I'm sure if like I couldn't name for somebody else why they were hurt, they would be worried about me doing it again. And we've had the conversations. We've sat down. We've talked about it. We've said like, this is what's wrong. And it doesn't get fixed. And that is incredibly hurtful. So when somebody sits there and owns their shit and is like, I get it. I can absolutely say that this is a thing that I can recognize and work on, it immediately starts to clear the air a little bit. Now, this goes into number 2, because I know some of you might have some thoughts on that. Hold that right now, because number 2 from Josh Coleman is adult children need to have also done their healing for reconciliation to be possible. And I do think that also goes with the adult parents. Well, I guess that's redundant. The parents as well. The children and the parents, both adults, need to do their own fucking healing. Imagine that. Imagine that. I can't just go to you being like, this is everything that's wrong with you. And then you being like, okay, I hear you. I get it. I'm going to own that. I'm going to work on it. And then me have not done any healing on my own. As an adult child, I also have to manage my own triggers. I have to manage my own stuff. I have to unpack that stuff. Whether it's in therapy, whether it's in some other kind of capacity, like whatever, get yourself whatever. Get there though, because if not, the very presence of your parents or whoever could be triggering. Can you imagine that? Somebody like tries really hard to work on their stuff and you haven't worked on your stuff and they walk in the room and you're like, see, you huffed again and I'm out of here. Right? Like you got to work on your shit as well in order for this reconnection to happen. And the final thing from Dr. Joshua Coleman that I do 100% agree with is both sides are ready to listen and hear without defensiveness. Like we're ready to have a conversation. We're not going to go tit for tat. We're not going to sit here and be like, yeah, but you did this and this happened. And what about that? Like, no, it doesn't work that way. And the wild thing about this, I'm talking specifically about families, but it applies wherever. You guys know I work with a lot of executives and teams and companies. Like this also applies there too. We need to have both sides ready to listen without being defensive because like it just is going to take more time and energy that nobody has and nobody wants to expend on it. If we just took the time to say like, okay, I want to fight the problem, not the person, things would be solved much quicker. But you cannot do that without healing. And you cannot do that without somebody owning their shit or both people owning a little bit of the shit. Reconciliation is like not guaranteed, right? But I do believe wholeheartedly, peace is always on the table. And sometimes trying to work things out, you can definitively say, yeah, no, this is going to work. And you can walk away. Like I am a big fan of doing everything possible. So you at the end of the day can be like, I feel like I genuinely tried everything. Like I can go to bed knowing that I tried my hardest to make this work before I severed that, because I got to do a lot of healing on the back end from what that means. But I want to know I did everything I could in that job, in that relationship, on that project. So I can go to bed saying like, this mattered to me and I tried what I could, but I cannot change another person. I've tried. Doesn't work. You cannot change another person without their permission. But again, I have more questions for you, I suppose, than answers. And I'm going to leave you with this. If you're thinking about family estrangement or you're navigating it currently, these are the things that I would ask you. Are you leaving to punish them or to protect yourself? Again, like, is this unsafe or uncomfortable? Are you having conversations about it, or are you just assuming that they understand what you need? Like, are you being explicit in what you need? And what would reconciliation actually require? What would you need in order to reconcile? And I want you to be deeply honest with yourself. And I do not want you to romanticize this. I need you to be honest and I need you to be realistic. What would it take? Like, if you're going to be like, I need my mom to be a completely different person, like, okay. I mean, maybe that's what it takes, but like, then reconciliation is not on the table. And maybe you're like, it's not, it's done, it's over. Great. Okay. You've made your decision. Now you need to heal. Now you need to do your work, because again, the questions that I had at the beginning really and truly are like, who do we become when we leave a family system that we're trained in? Like, that's then a question you have to ask yourself. Again, this is a lot. It's a lot to unpack. And I hope that, well, I was about to say, I hope I didn't offend any of you too badly, but like, not that I don't care about offending you people, but like, I want you to feel a little uncomfortable in the best ways possible to challenge yourself to grow. And the whole point of this podcast is why we are the way we are and what to do about it. I don't want us falling into TikTok therapy and Instagram therapy culture of like, me first, toxic environment, get up and leave. If you're not welcome at the table, find your own table, right? Like, there's parts of that. You need to take that with a grain of salt, but you also have to fight for things in your life that matter. And I want you at the end of the day to know you did everything you could. And that if somebody was going to do it back to you, you would feel okay with the way that they handled it. Or you would be like, you know what? They did everything they could before they severed this tie with me. Because I do think as millennials, we are raising another generation. And I hope that this is a trend that doesn't continue, because there's a lot there. Families are difficult. Families come with a lot of their own baggage, and it won't ever be perfect. And I don't think that's the goal. But I think the goal is mutual respect. I think it's boundaries. I think it's grace and understanding. And my hope is peace. I hope that you have peace in your relationships, because with peace comes freedom, and with freedom comes growth. Let me get off my soapbox. Let me end this episode that I didn't want to do in the first place, but knew I needed to. I hope you guys have taken something from this and can apply it somewhere, or maybe look at something a little bit differently. But mostly I want you to take it all with a grain of salt and know that these are not blanket statements that are going to apply in every situation. So you're going to have to do some of your own digging. You're going to have to do some of your own research, some of your own self-awareness, or understanding a bit more, some more fact finding. But like every F word, we will be back next week with more. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. And we will see you next week.
Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.